You can't pay attention 100% of the time. And even if you're paying attention, I'm obviously a world-class athlete, so I would never get it. But
Yeah.
there is no reaction times.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming back to another recording, another discussion at Foul Ball Safety Now Talks. I'm here with Brianna Ludwig. We're in the middle of December and baseball trades are happening. There's some news that I want to discuss about Foul Ball Safety Now, but before we do, I like to give a little bit of a recap about Foul Ball Safety Now and how it started. Back in 2019, I personally saw something on the news which was very disturbing, and there was a little child that got hurt by a foul ball. And being a big baseball fan, I kind of knew the issue existed. I had also experienced a situation 20 years ago when I was outside in Brooklyn, New York, Cyclones game in Coney Island, where a ball came over the side and it hit somebody we were with, a young person we were with, right in the forearm. And where did that come from? That kind of thing. And even being at a playoff game back in 2006, sitting a few rows above the dugout near Jerry Seinfeld, I had some anxiety just sitting in that hot zone for a while. I was never really that close. But after seeing the news, that really started the 6 years of me working with an investigative journalist by the name of Brendan, and working with the person who's going to be introducing our guest shortly, Brianna. She's been with me for over a year doing research, communications, and now these recordings with our guests. So much to be learned, so much to keep on unearthing. People are finding us at Foul Ball Safety Now. We're getting Googled by attorneys that are working on potential cases. We're getting contacted by victims seeking legal representation, and even baseball players. We've interviewed more than 30 baseball players who are curious to talk about this issue even years after their careers. Many of these professional players that we found played a few years in the minor leagues. Some even had major league experience. Maybe they now own baseball schools or they're private instructors. So you reach out to those folks and they're curious about this matter as well, something they may have addressed with their own personal family, but they didn't really address it with the fans. About what the true experience of attending a game would be like. And even lately, we're learning about things that are happening outside the ballpark. As I mentioned from my Brooklyn experience with the ball flying over the side, we were contacted by an attorney in Modesto, California earlier in the spring. And unfortunately, his client was struck in the head outside. These balls may hit the pavement, they may hit a car window, and yeah, occasionally hits a person in the head, and that's not a good thing. So why is business as usual allowing 10 or 15 balls within a 3-hour period to reach the sides? And the Queens College investigation as well is still going strong. The Queens College matter, I was contacted by a student athlete in Queens earlier in the year, and we just got an article last week after 4 letters writing to the Queens College and copying the NCAA on it. The student athletes are speaking up. They are worried amongst themselves that they could hurt a child. They told me, the student athlete had shared with me, that I should Google Earth the public school, the Queens College campus where the field is, and you'll notice there's a public school which is on the campus or right next door to the field. And these student athletes are, legitimately concerned. So their psychological well-being is being messed around with because they feel like it's just a matter of time that one of their balls are going to make it over the side and do some serious damage. So we want to certainly let the guys play the game free and clear. That would be a great thing. We're optimistic. We're meeting great guests. We're excited to bring on our next guest, Jackson. Brianna's going to introduce him to you, and we'll get into some news. We'll sprinkle in some news as the conversation unfolds. So, Brianna, how are you today?
Doing great, Jordan. Happy to be here and talk about foul ball safety today. I'm excited to bring our guest on, Jackson Everest. He is a retired business executive, an actor, and an avid baseball fan. Welcome, Jackson.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, Jackson, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jordan. How about yourself?
Great, great. It's good to have baseball fans, avid baseball fans like I am, because we are serious about foul ball safety now, but at the same time, we still identify with our teams. At least I do, and we certainly want you to feel uh, from this experience more about this matter following our discussion. So, thank you.
Glad to be here.
Great. Are you ready to start us off? Take the reins and give
Sure.
us a few questions. Pepper us with some questions, and we're excited to hear your ideas and questions.
I've been at games where I've seen people get injured by foul balls, and you mentioned being at a Mets playoff game and sitting up close. And I saw a stat that 78% of baseball fans would prefer more netting just for safety purposes. So I guess the obvious question is, if 78% of the people going to the games, buying tickets, paying to be there, want more protection, the players want more protection. No player wants to injure a fan,
Mhm,
and you've been involved in this movement for 5+ years.
mhm.
Who's saying no? Why is Major League Baseball and is I mean, there's financial aspects, but I mean, it can't be that much. So why has it not happened already?
Yeah, so that's a loaded question, even though it may not come across as loaded. There's a lot of situations to speak about why MLB doesn't all of a sudden just say, "Fix it. Solutions are available. Let's provide solutions instead of just incremental improvements." I'll go back to 1979 when my lawyer's friend was unfortunately blinded in one eye at Shea Stadium. I'll go back to 1970 when a 14-year-old boy died at Dodger Stadium, got hit by a ball above the dugout in 1970 and died a few days later. And why was it 45 years later that then netting had gone over the dugout? Does baseball have some knowledge, advanced knowledge, that this is part of the day-to-day experience, that the inevitable injuries will be coming? I believe they do, and I think they really understand this intimately. And why have they not shared with us from 1970 to the present time about what the fan experience is going to be for that calendar year when it comes to dangerous foul balls? And I think if that had ever come about, I think agencies and fans would have gotten notice about what to expect coming to the games. Agencies would have stepped in long ago and certainly would have made age appropriate suggestions or mandates. But I don't think that's happened, and it still hasn't happened 2025. There was a 2019 video that we call Exhibit A 5-minute video that ESPN produced, and that was an horrific video where you can see children and others getting hit by balls, seriously hurt past end of dugouts. Mrs. Goldblum was mentioned in there. She was up in the loge. She was the woman, unfortunately, who got hit in the low section above the netting behind home plate in 2018. Took a year plus till the Dodgers raised their nets vertically, and even nobody knew about Mrs. Goldblum for the whole month of September for sure. She was hit in August of 2018, and it wasn't announced till 2019, so Dodger fans were sitting maybe in the same seat and row and section and had no idea. When you said 78% of the fans agree, and ESPN put out the survey, I don't dispute the survey, but when you see the video, the 2019 video, you see 700,000 views. That was also produced by ESPN. 700,000 views, 4,000 comments, but 80% of the comments were actually contrary to netting. They were knucklehead fans blaming the victims. So that's what I wanted to get across to you, Jackson.
It's always interesting because obviously you feel strongly about this. And so when you say like knucklehead fans, like I think that can, it doesn't help from my perspective. And I'll play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure, of course.
It doesn't help your argument. I personally
Mhm.
have been to over 1,000 professional baseball games. I've never got a foul ball. I've never got hit by a foul ball, so knock on
Right.
wood. I was at a game with my brother where he caught 2 foul balls in back-to-back innings, which is, as someone who wants to catch a foul ball, it's a little concerning.
Uh-huh.
But, statistically speaking,
Mhm.
over 100 million people. Major League Baseball, I think their attendance last year was around 71 million. And in the minor leagues, which there's a lot more games, but attendance is obviously much lower, there were another 30 plus million people. So over 100 million people attended professional baseball games last year. I didn't do a ton of research, but my guess is between 1,500 and 2,000 people were hit by foul balls. Is that ballpark accurate?
Oh, I mean, if you're asking percentage, of course, it's a lot less than 1% of the fans that are seriously injured every single year. Of course, we kinda know that. But being
But it is
said,
preventable. Yeah.
it is preventable. People like Brianna, who've been with me for a year, and parents and mother groups that may be forming because of Brianna's inspiration, they're gonna wanna know when they come to the game moving forward that they know exactly where to sit. No ifs, no buts, no risks, no questions. Should I come to the game? Now, baseball can't reassure Brianna and her friends and her group friends, well, she may not come, but at least tell her before she gets to the game that this is as far as we can go in alerting you to what you can expect. Baseball has intimate knowledge about what happened the year before and what's coming this year. They've been tracking every ball for a decade or two, exit velocities, launch angles. Why not come up with a one pager and just put it on the table? Let us know after you view Exhibit A1, which is at Foul Ball Safety Now, demonstrates 2,400 major league games a year, also 14,000 other professional games every single year. Those are all the affiliates and the independent leagues. Clearly 14,000, 53 foul balls per game. Now, I cut that number in half, so I don't want to look like I'm inflating anything over a 9 inning game. So I said 25, which is even less than half. 25 times 14,000, that's 350,000 foul balls. And it even shows you, based on this published report by 538 in 2019, in the directions those 350,000 balls may be going. But it doesn't tell you how fast they're going. It says they're hot zones, like where the Todd Frazier incident was and the Almora incident was, where those balls are past end of dugouts. I think it begs for the question to just know, how fast were those balls going? If it was 20% of balls going into those hot zones, just how fast were they going? And I think MLB knows this. Why aren't they just telling us this? And then let's just go where the conversation needs to go after that. If certain agencies should have been notified 25 years ago or 50 years ago after Alan Fish unfortunately got struck, so be it. You have the data. Just tell the people. Let Brianna and her family know more, and her friends and others. So the 80% of those comments, those 4,000 comments from that 700,000, I don't think it was mostly baseball fans that sounded a little bit ignorant. 20% of those comments were very intelligent. But you can go through those comments, 1 in 5 made some sense, but the other 4 out of 5 really sounded like people were just looking to make noise based on a 5-minute video, which 20% of those people found to be disturbing, but 80% of them I thought were sounded a little insensitive.
To say exactly how many people get injured every season, have been injured, because the MLB is not required to report fan injuries. So, actually, something that we've been doing this past year is combing social media, and we've actually found a lot of self reported injuries, which are all available on our website. There's a tab called Injuries Reported 2025, and we've gone through the 2025 season and then have even started going back into other years where we're finding so many injuries, and fans are posting pictures of what's happened to them, videos of what they're seeing at the games, all of these things that are not making headline news. It's just somebody with 12 followers is putting it out. And luckily, the algorithm and the searches are allowing us to find it so that we can start to kind of figure out for the first time, how often is this really happening? And there's a lot of reasons why these injuries get swept under the rug, and one of them is, of course, the baseball rule. It's hard to build a case against baseball. They're very protected, and it's hard to find a lawyer who will even take the case. But then when it is a high-profile incident, like a child who is severely injured or a death or somebody getting blinded, the MLB will settle outside of court, which, of course, comes with a big fat NDA. We actually know of a case that just settled after 9 years, and the family will never be able to publicly speak on the matter that changed their lives forever or all those years that they spent fighting. So a lot of the victims end up getting muzzled for life after they get their settlement. And then there's even less public knowledge of what happened to them.
That was a lot, Jackson, from both of us. So
No, but it's great information.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming when you purchase a ticket to a Major League Baseball game, part of that is a disclaimer that you could get hit by a foul ball, you could get hit by a piece of a bat, you could, there's risk involved in attending, and you're assuming that risk by going. As a whole, MLB is they do everything that they can to protect themselves. Which obviously, if I was Major League Baseball, I would be doing the same thing. I was just in Punta Cana, and we rented little 4x4s. And you're in a foreign country, so there's no recourse. But we still signed, 4 pages of paperwork saying, of course, it's And then they're half broken. They look like they're going to wreck anyways. And but you paid $85, so you go. Look at it from a different perspective. What Major League are there teams that are doing a great job with this, that have responded and have nets from the backstop to the foul pole? Are there teams that are doing that currently?
There are teams that have made some improvements. There's even been some, big statements put out by MLB about what's going to happen in the minor leagues about upgrades, but it's not been where you can say there's a solution. Maybe the nets are a little further down, maybe they're higher in certain places, but at the end of the day, we have the information. MLB's always had the information to give people more information before they get to the game. Because once we're at the game and once we're sitting in those seats, even if there's a warning right by your cup holder to be careful, where you put your drink, be careful. Even an announcement, what does that actually mean? We're not action figures. We're not superheroes. We're not getting out of the way. When people see Exhibit A from 2019, the ESPN production, you can't get out of the way. It's not humanly possible. Ask Hunter Windelstadt, the umpire, who was doing his job earlier in the spring. He's 100 feet away. He's 90 feet from home to first and 10 feet behind. He's staring without blinking, and he got one right in the forehead. Now imagine somebody 100 feet over to the right, past the end of the dugout, right past the third base dugout, where those 2 children were seriously injured on that ESPN video. It's not possible. Baseball players are not sitting there, and they long told their own parents to sit in certain sections. And unfortunately, we're not getting this information before we get to the game. They'll tell you in micro print that they're not responsible, but what does that have to do with prevention? They're telling you, now it's on the e-ticket, so you're not even really finding it as you used to on the hard ticket. We're not being told about what happened the year before and what they expect this year. And I think if we had, I just feel like there'd be a lot more conversations, robust conversations on this matter. And it was nice that ESPN put together this production in 2019. It was about the time I started, and it was right after the incident with the Chicago Cubs player who hit one of those little girls. NBC did a study, which was, I thought, interesting. It was from 2012 to 2019, which I think was 8 baseball seasons, and they spent some time on it. It wasn't just an Eyewitness News evening report about a child getting hurt, which you can probably go on YouTube and find the 100 of those, and I can mention quite a handful. But this was more of a detailed report of 4 teams out of the 30 MLB clubs took part in sharing their data. It wasn't the teams themselves, it was the independent contractors. And these are the first aid folks that are hired by the teams to come for 3 hours before and after, or before, during, and after the game for slip and falls or foul ball injuries. They're like the medical staff. 4 of those 30 teams actually shared their data with NBC, and I think it was about average 175 per team, and it was about 700 or 800 altogether. that was only 4 teams and some miscellaneous incidences, but if you took 30 times 175, it would be like about 5,000 people that reported to first aid over 8 years, not all with serious eye injuries or concussions, but mostly related to baseball injuries, and that's not even including imagine if NBC ever said, "Well, we're gonna go to all the 5 times as many more games going on in other professional leagues." How many people, may have reported to first aid in those places? Maybe the same amount or more because of the lack of netting and balls not only, hitting people past end of dugouts, where in today's day, in 2025, there's still 30 to 40 cities that still have no netting past end of dugouts. These are the affiliates, mostly the indie leagues at this stage. But inside and outside balls are still, making their way in these smaller places inside and outside the ballpark doing serious damage, as in Modesto, California, with the woman who was standing outside who got it in the head, which is an affiliate of the Mariners, which is on the website of Foul Ball Safety Now. So that was a mouthful, Jackson, but just putting some things in front of you.
No, it's a fascinating topic, and it's something that's eye-opening,
Mhm.
because you don't really think about it, and I go to a handful of games every year. I used to go to a lot more. I generally sit behind the netting, or I'll sit in the outfield in the first couple rows and hope for a home run. So, if you could have anything, obviously related to this topic, what is the ultimate goal? To have more netting, higher netting, going all the way down to the foul poles, to have hot zones identified is the ultimate goal, to get as much information from Major League Baseball as possible, just to create a higher level of awareness and have them. I mean, they're never gonna say they're culpable for anything, but maybe they can, like there can be a warning on a ticket. And you're right, with digital tickets, there's nothing to read. You're clicking on a thing saying you accept whatever that is. You don't even have to read it. So, but what is the ultimate goal?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited because I think once the like-minded come into the room, you know what happens at town halls. Everyone's going to bark out solutions. Everyone says we need to do this and that, the other. But there clearly are solutions out there. Japan has a culture which I think is a lot better than ours when it comes to the games. And even on HBO back in 2016, Brian Gumbel did something on Real Sports where it had simulators showing balls and how you can't get out of the way. How in Japan, there's nets I think are a lot higher, further and wider, where they have team attendants on every aisle, where they're actually blowing whistles as the balls are coming up and over the netting, telling you to heads up, that kind of thing. Because heads up may only be the defense that the current environment in Japan even has. They even have animation up on the scoreboard, which may be a little distasteful, but it's to the point. They show people getting carted off in ambulances because they want to hammer home the point that going to the game isn't just a free and clear experience, that whatever you can do to have your wits about you, do it. So there is that, but at least they're doing some of those things. They even have this thing called Excite Seats, where they allow people to sit in exposed areas, I guess just past the end of the dugouts, where they give you helmets and gloves. But even on one of those videos, I saw a child wearing a helmet and glove. The last I checked, Jackson, 11-year-olds aren't ready to catch line drives, and it could hit them in the face if they're not wearing face masks. So I could even be a little bit critical on how Japan is doing it, but all open for conversation. How are we going to do it in America? How are we going to do it in these 169 professional cities? 120 of those cities are affiliates of MLB where they pay the salaries. Why at the end of 2024, or how long it took for Peoria, which is an affiliate of the Cardinals, to finally put netting above the dugout. They were one of 120 that didn't even have netting above the dugout up until the end of the 2024 season. I took them to court because we had a plaintiff, and people can see it, Foul Ball Safety Now. I was in court for around a year, from July of 23 to July of 24, with a lawyer, with a plaintiff, with a strategy, and we went a few rounds in court. So that went so far. But case by case, city by city, let's come up with a plan. whether it's professional baseball that's not Major League Baseball or whether it's professional baseball within Major League Baseball. It's time to have this discussion. Brianna and I could bark out solutions all day long, but parents who didn't know about this, Jackson, all of a sudden may take it personal that they weren't informed. Their epiphany of awareness may lead them to think we should have been more informed. If so be it. My epiphany of awareness is hopefully epiphany of awareness slash call to action. That's what I can do. And I'll say, oh, Brianna, look what we're doing. We're breathing life into this conversation. This is exciting. People are adopting the cause. They're rethinking their own experiences. How cool is that? So we're all about that, Jackson.
This definitely doesn't have to keep happening. It's 2025. We have certainly more technology than ever before to prevent this from happening. The netting technology, where the view is definitely not as obstructed today with netting as it may have been, back in the 70s, back in the 60s. But it's just pretty heartbreaking to imagine going to a game with your family and having something horrible happen to your child or happen to your partner. It's traumatizing for a lot of these victims and families. And I think it'll just take baseball admitting that they have a problem. I think that would be the first step. We haven't seen any sort of reconciliation or true apology to the victims. You can shower people with gifts and free ice cream and free tickets, but it doesn't give them their brain back. It doesn't, fix the problem. And if the MLB can't really issue a true apology to any victim, when they know, they could tell this victim, "Oh, I'm so sorry this happened to you," but it could happen again the next night in any of their ballparks to somebody else. So, I think the first step would be them admitting that this is something that they need to fix.
Yeah, and I would argue that they would never do that because that just opens up such a tremendous liability for them. Their stance would be, "Well, it isn't a problem, but we're gonna err on the side of caution, and we're gonna do this, this, and this." And it's unfortunate they haven't made greater strides because it doesn't seem all that complex. Jordan, you're right. They know where every ball goes. They know the exit
Mhm,
velocity. They know where it's
mhm,
landing.
mhm.
They can tell you exactly the distance a ball went that's hit out of the ballpark, and they can tell you exactly where a foul ball landed. And they can identify hot zones in ballparks, and they can do a much better job with netting. Like there's a minor league team that's not far from where I live, and the nets
Mhm,
end at first base.
mhm.
And we've gone to games and sat right past the netting. It's great because the first baseman tosses the kids a foul ball on their way off the
Right,
field,
right.
but we've moved back 4 rows after getting a foul ball or two so that we're protected by the net because you can't pay attention 100% of the time. And even if you're paying attention, I'm obviously a world-class athlete, so I would never get hit, but,
We're not
um
action figures and we're not superheroes. That's my simple way of putting it.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's just there
yeah.
is no reaction time. And
Right, exactly.
and this isn't part of this topic, but, like,
Right,
my daughter's 15, she plays high-end
okay,
competitive softball,
right,
it's travel ball,
right.
and when I was a kid playing baseball, the backstops went up and over the hitters so that foul balls that went straight up or went back would be knocked down by the backstop.
Yeah.
They don't do that anymore because it costs too much. And we were at a game last summer and a foul ball went up and it went over the backstop and it hit a baby. It
It
was
hit Mary
horrible.
Hart in the World Series. I don't know if anyone
It's
saw that. Mary Hart's husband, Bert Sugarman, during the World Series.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's a solvable problem that it seems like it's just being incrementally addressed, and it's almost, reactionary, and
Right.
probably in a lot of ways, someone gets hurt at this ballpark, okay, now we have to put more netting up to demonstrate that we are making an effort to make things better, not because we actually want to. And for the fans, like you mentioned, the 80% that are posting, "Well, this is stupid. I want to get a foul ball." Then sit in the outfield, catch home runs. Like
Right.
don't sit down the first base and third base line.
Right.
Like
Right.
it's just it's not safe, and they need to be making it safer. I applaud you for the effort you're putting into this. I read someplace you offered, I think $100,000 to pay for the netting to be put
That
up
was my first
at
few
a
weeks on the, campaign. People may think that was knee jerk, but, 6 years later, I have a lot more into it than the 100,000. But it's
yeah, no,
okay.
no, no,
It's
but that's
okay.
just
Yeah.
that you're willing to put your money where your mouth
Yeah.
is, that
Yeah.
you're not just
Thanks.
saying, "Hey, this is a problem, go fix it." and
Yeah.
then like someone else has to pay for it. So and I will tell you, I had a friend from college that worked in minor league baseball for 12
Uh-huh.
seasons,
Uh-huh.
and there's no money there. And it's
I know these guys are making nothing. Yeah.
yeah, he was the general manager. He also poured beer. He lined the field, and he made
Right.
$32,000 a year and worked 16-hour days. And he had 4 roommates that none of which spoke English. It was not a great life. That's part of the reason minor league baseball players have unionized, because they were treated
Just
like chattel.
recently.
So where do you go from here? Yeah,
It's just continuation of people meeting foul ball safety now, and just we put the writing on the wall. We want call to action. Epiphany of awareness should lead to call to action. And we're all in a position to maybe do something locally where we are at our local fields. I'm there for some sort of inspiration if I could provide it, to get everyone to address what's happening in their ballparks locally. You know, you shouldn't be arriving to the grounds of a ballpark and worry about you getting out of the car and getting hit by a ball. You shouldn't worry about going inside the ballpark, standing on line at a concession line like one of the 10-year-olds that we met. We've interviewed more than 20 victims and family members. One girl was 10 years old who got struck by a ball waiting online to get food. These smaller ballparks, the concessions are within access of foul balls that are coming hard. And she got hurt, and fortunately not long term. There was another 4-year-old, another girl we met. She wasn't as fortunate, and she's got struggles now as a teenager and neurological issues. And another girl we had met who was, unfortunately, this was really bad. She was struck unconscious for 4 or 5 days as like a 10-year-old. And her parents, after she got better, were taking free tickets from the team, and she may be thinking now, as a 30-year-old woman who is sharing her physical, emotional, psychological issues with Brendan and I. Brendan is the journalist I've been with now for 6 years. She went on the record with us, and she implied that maybe she's feeling some kind of gift remorse because maybe her parents should not have taken those free tickets and told them to take care of the problem so it would not happen to the next person. So we're really powerful interviews, about 80 interviews in, and people continually find us, and we're starting new forums with athletes. We just got a Queens College acknowledgement from a Queens College newspaper reporter after writing 4 letters to Queens College. On the 4th letter, we copied the NCAA, and I checked with their office in Indiana, and I know who the point of contact should be. We contacted the president on the 4th letter because we weren't getting a response. What's happening at Queens College may be happening at 500 colleges. There's fields that are on campuses. People can read at Foul Ball Safety Now, the Queens College student who contacted me, who's concerned that him or one of his teammates would do some serious damage. He said, Google Earth, Queens College, and I did. And people will notice there's a public school right on the grounds, right next to the field. And these student athletes, rightfully so, are concerned that one of their balls are going to go over the side and make some major damage to a human being. So if this can start a conversation at all local campuses, because fields are too much close to human proximity. We got a note from a booster in Tennessee, White House, Tennessee, of all places. Yes, there was a White House, Tennessee, and a local high school parent got in touch with me saying, we can't have soccer games going on while baseball games are going on. Will you help us? Will you put some nets up for us? So I said, your problem isn't so unique. And I wish I could, and I wish them best of luck, but at least they're talking about it. They can't have soccer games while baseball games are going on. Why? Because the balls are leaving the field and going on the soccer field. All right, at least they're paying attention to it. So it's time to pay attention to it. Student athletes are thinking about this all the time. Even Shohei Ohtani had that moment in the World Series, which we may be able to start a national discussion about. If people see a Foul Ball Safety Now, Jackson, that Shohei Ohtani vulnerability link, you'll also see that he had that moment where he thought he hurt somebody. He had that cringeworthy moment where he hit a line drive down the right field line and he thought he hit a spectator. So for a moment, you saw that humanity come through. Of course, if any of us ever thought we ever hit somebody with our car, we'd pull over and we'd compose ourselves. It didn't take him too long to compose himself because that at bat, he hit a home run, but that's another story. But at least we're seeing examples of this. The announcer said something ridiculous like, Shohei sends his apologies down the lines to anyone he may have scared. But they don't really react as they would react. We've interviewed with 2 ESPN broadcasters, so that's an interesting side note. We've interviewed about 80 people, a couple of ESPN guys, one who had major league experience for a year or two and worked on the college level, and the other guy was a college baseball reporter. So people are speaking up with us on the record. It's exciting, Jackson. We'll keep it going.
Yeah, when you mentioned the colleges, Major League Baseball is one thing, it's 30 ballparks. In the minors, there's another 140, 150 ballparks.
Yeah,
plus
whatever the
plus
number may be. Plus the ones I don't even know about. Yeah, 169. Yeah.
Yes, and then you have some spring training facilities that aren't
Arizona and California. Yeah, Arizona and Florida.
And Florida, yeah. And then, but when you then you mention colleges, and you're like, okay, well, that's
a whole nother can of worms.
That's another 500. And
I know, exactly. The 50,000 players in the NCAA, and if their psychological well-being is being messed with, well, I'm going to have to pay attention to it. And I have been paying attention to it for the better part of a year, or almost a year, because that's when I got contacted by that student athlete. Fortunately, people are finding us through my posts, through my website. We're getting Googled. Lawyers are finding us, and we'll keep it going. I think it's really important.
So I would love to know how you interpret this issue, maybe first from the lens of a business executive and then from the lens of a baseball fan.
So from a business perspective, I guess it's really a cost analysis. It is, what's the expense, what's the liability, and really the pros and the cons. And what's interesting is my suspicion is that there's a lot of teams that are thinking to themselves that the fans want to catch foul balls. We have to put up netting at the minimal level so that our fans can catch foul balls, because that's why a lot of people come to the park. And I would assume, you should never assume things, but I would assume that a lot of Major League Baseball teams get significantly negative feedback from season ticket holders when they put netting up in front of them. And I will use myself as an example. I was at a game and I was sitting in the front row and the netting was, a foot from me. And I honestly commented to my friends a couple of times. I was like, wow, it's giving me a headache. Like, I'm too close. I don't like the way it just made I didn't feel good because of the netting. And we moved back 5 rows and it becomes invisible. But when you're, a couple feet from it, I didn't like it. And so from a business perspective, I'm sure that they feel like they're listening to the fans. Or I'm sure that they propose that they're listening to the fans that are buying the tickets in those seats, and they're saying, we don't want netting. I would also guess that that's nonsense. And it is, not to get political, but it's the 1% or 2% on each end of the political spectrum that scream the loudest. Just, if there's 1,000 seats that are in hot zones, there's 50 fans that are complaining if they put nets up and saying, well, if you put a net up, I'm going to cancel my season tickets. They won't. They're still going to have the tickets. They're still going to go to the games. Everybody says they're going to cancel, but nobody ever does. I think from a business perspective, that would, that's probably their thought process. What's the liability and what's the expense? And what are the negative impacts to the fan experience? The positive impacts to the fan experience are no one gets injured. You don't see a little 2-year-old being carried off with a stitching in her skin, heading to the hospital. Like, that's worth it in and of itself. As a baseball fan, I go to a lot of games, and I don't go as much anymore because my daughter's playing softball constantly, but I used to go to 40, 50 games a summer. The netting is not a problem. I personally didn't like it when I sat close to it. I'm sure if I did it 10 games in a row, I'd get very used to it. You mentioned earlier, Brianna, that the type of netting and the quality of netting has changed where it's not as negatively impactful. And I believe you. I'm sure there's things they can do to make it so it doesn't bother anybody. But I can't imagine the idea of raising your hand to say, no, I would like to be unsafe. Well, how can I be unsafe? everybody wants safety. Everybody, there's a reason they have seatbelt laws. 40,000 people die a year in car accidents, ballpark. Like it used to be 5 times that, but then they made it, everybody has to wear a seatbelt. And there was a significant reduction in car accident, homicides or deaths. And it's just, it could be the same with Major League Baseball. They could, if there's 1,500 people or 3,500 people or 5,000 people getting hit by foul balls every season, they could cut that down to 20. It could be an incident that's so rare that it's news. They have the opportunity to do it. I don't know why they would.
That was great. And you raise a lot of questions, but there are solution makers. We're all solution idea people. And I think that's what happens at the conferences. And solution makers, the MITs of the world, are craving for this challenge of figuring out the perfect landscape for MLB and professional baseball and college baseball, and even lower down, where heads up doesn't have to be the only line of defense for the people that are walking down the street. So this is really an exciting conversation, and we really, really appreciate this time, Jackson. And there's opportunities for all of us to, we're creating an epiphany of awareness. Certainly, we want to create an epiphany of a call to action. I'm definitely around. Brianna and I are around to meet new people, and we'll just keep on bringing out new research, and all things that we discover at Foul Ball Safety Now are up on the website. It's been a very active year, and I think this was great. So, Jackson, I want to thank you so much, and Brianna, as usual, and let's do it again soon, people.